Girlfriend beat an armed intruder with an unloaded shotgun at 2 a.m., and she called a lawyer before the cops even arrived. Months later, she disappeared into the woods. The other night I was sleeping over at my girlfriend's place. She lives in the middle of nowhere practically. No street lights, no sidewalks. Her house sits at the end of a long gravel driveway surrounded by dense trees. The nearest neighbor is a half-mile down the road, and you can't even see their porch light from her property. She keeps her house completely dark at night except for whatever room she's in. Says it attracts bats and keeps bugs away. I never questioned it before, just thought it was one of her quirky habits. It was around 2 a.m. when everything went to shit. I woke up to her shaking me hard, telling me to call 911 right fucking now. My brain wasn't braining yet, but her voice had this edge I'd never heard before. While I fumbled for my phone, she was already moving. By the time I found it and dialed, she was out of the bedroom. I followed her voice, still trying to explain to the 911 operator what was happening when I didn't even know myself. Long story short, some guy had smashed through a window into the garage and was going through my car. I didn't even know what was happening until I stumbled out after her and saw the broken glass everywhere. The guy had a knife, not a small one either. One of those hunting knives with a serrated edge. My girlfriend had grabbed her shotgun from wherever she keeps it. Later found out it wasn't even loaded, which might have been worse because instead of shooting the bastard she ended up using it like a goddamn baseball bat. This guy wasn't right in the head. Maybe drugs, maybe something else. There were bloody handprints on my car already when we got to the garage. When my girlfriend pointed the shotgun at him and told him to get out, he didn't run. He charged us. I still can't piece together exactly what happened next. It was dark, and everything moved too fast. My girlfriend somehow tripped him, or maybe he tripped himself, I don't know. Then she started using the stock of the shotgun on his ribcage. Not just hitting him, but methodically pressing down, like she was trying to collapse his lungs. There was this horrible cracking sound. The guy was screaming. Blood everywhere. She didn't stop. I had to physically pull her off him. I grabbed her shoulders and yanked her backward. She didn't resist, just let me pull her away. Then she sat down on the floor, cross-legged, completely calm. Blood all over her. Her pajamas were soaked with it. Some of it was his, some was probably hers. I found out later she had cuts on her arms from the broken glass. She pulled out her phone and called a lawyer before the cops even showed up. Had the number saved in her contacts. Not 911. A lawyer. You have to understand something about my girlfriend. She's the person who stops her car to move turtles off the road. She catches spiders in cups and releases them outside instead of killing them. She's a practicing Buddhist. Nonviolence is a huge part of her identity. Before this, I would have described her as the gentlest person I know. She cries during animal rescue commercials, for fuck's sake. When the cops finally arrived, they were worse than useless. They barely looked at the broken window. They kept asking me questions like I was the criminal. They actually tried to handcuff me until my girlfriend stepped in. Her voice was ice cold when she told them they were making a mistake. She mentioned her lawyers and they backed off. The guy was still on the floor moaning, and they tried to just throw him in the back of a police car. My girlfriend had to demand they call an ambulance. He needs medical attention, she told them. The cops acted like it was a massive inconvenience. The cops also gave us hell about confronting him. You're fucking idiots, they said. Never confront a burglar. Easy for them to say when they showed up almost 40 minutes later. What were we supposed to do? Hide in a corner while he took whatever he wanted? What if he decided to come into the house next? We were supposed to just wait and see? The guy's still in the hospital. No charges against my girlfriend, yet. The lawyer she called has been helpful, walking us through everything step by step. Says it was clear self-defense, especially with the broken window and the knife. Says we shouldn't worry about legal consequences, but cautions us against talking to anyone about what happened without consulting him first. Every time I close my eyes, I see my girlfriend covered in blood holding that shotgun. I can't stop my heart from racing. I haven't slept more than an hour at a stretch since it happened. I keep checking the locks on the doors and windows, even though we've already changed them all. Every small noise makes me jump. My girlfriend suggested I might be experiencing some kind of trauma response. She looked up therapists in the area for me and made an appointment. I'm staying at her place now. Haven't left her side. Made sure she's eating, taking the medications they gave her after she was exposed to the intruder's blood. She hasn't talked much about what happened, and I haven't pushed her. She's been spending more time meditating than usual. Sometimes I find her sitting in front of her small altar, eyes closed, completely still for hours. The garage window is boarded up now. We're waiting for a replacement. The car's been cleaned, but I still can't bring myself to drive it. My girlfriend offered to sell it and help me find another one if that would make me feel better. I might take her up on that. Someone at work suggested I see her differently now because she's violent or dangerous. That's bullshit. If anything, I see her as even more complex than I realized. She hasn't changed. I've gotten some shit from friends and family who think that as the man I should have been the one to handle the situation. That's stuck in my head more than I'd like to admit. Got an emergency therapy appointment next week to talk through some of this. My girlfriend says gender roles are constructs designed to make people feel inadequate, and that anyone who thinks I should have protected her instead of the other way around is missing the point entirely. For those wondering about details I left out, I saw her stomp on the guy's crotch hard enough that I heard something rupture. She knew exactly what she was doing. The only thing I still can't wrap my head around is how calm she was afterward. While I was shaking and stumbling over my words with the cops, she was clear and focused. She knew exactly what to say and what not to say. It was like watching someone flip a switch from Buddha to warrior and back again. I don't think either of us will be the same after this. The locks are changed. New security system gets installed tomorrow. Update, 8 months later. 8 months ago, I posted about my girlfriend, who I'll call Diana to make this easier to write, beating the shit out of a home intruder with an unloaded shotgun. A lot has happened since then, so I figured I'd give an update for those who are interested. First, about the intruder. He was a man in his 60s from a nearby town with a long history of drug problems, jail time, and mental health issues. We found out that about 2 months after my original post, he died in the hospital. His sister reached out to us, insisting she didn't blame Diana for what happened. She told us the doctors said he probably didn't have much longer anyway due to his overall health. Diana's face during that conversation made it clear she wasn't convinced that was the whole truth, but the sister seemed genuine. The meeting with his sister was Diana's idea. I was against it initially, worried the family might be looking to gather information for a lawsuit. The lawyer advised against it too. But Diana insisted. I need to face the consequences of my actions, she said. So we met at a neutral location. The sister brought photos of the guy from better times. He'd been a carpenter once, before the drugs took over. Had kids who wouldn't speak to him anymore. A life that had gradually unraveled. Diana listened to every word, asked thoughtful questions, and apologized for her role in his death, even though it was self-defense. I watched the sister's face shift from guarded to understanding over the course of 2 hours. By the end, they hugged. I couldn't have done what Diana did that day, facing the family of someone whose death she caused. The aftermath hit Diana harder than I initially realized. About 3 months after the incident, she planned a solo trip to a national park during a week she knew I couldn't get time off work. She packed up and left, promising to check in regularly. The check-ins became less frequent, then stopped entirely after a few days. When I finally got through to her on the phone, something wasn't right. She was talking about needing to stay in the woods, about learning something essential that she couldn't leave behind. When I asked how long this learning might take, she said, "Some people take a lifetime." Then she started talking about being too attached to me, to her house, to her pets. About how materialistic her life had become, how she needed to strip everything away and start over. Her words made a certain kind of sense, but her tone was off, drifting and disconnected. I remembered her mentioning once that she takes medication for seizures that can cause symptoms similar to psychosis if she misses doses. I asked if she had her medication with her. The long pause told me everything I needed to know. When she finally answered, she said, "I don't need them anymore. I'm seeing clearly for the first time in years." I called her doctor, who confirmed that abruptly stopping her medication could cause serious problems. But I had no idea where exactly in this massive national park she was staying. She'd mentioned a specific trail when she first arrived, but that had been days ago. In desperation, I drove to her Buddhist temple. I'd only been there a couple times before, but I knew it was important to her. I explained the situation to the first person I found there. Within an hour, I was sitting with one of the monks. He listened carefully, asked thoughtful questions, and then did something I never expected. He offered to drive the 6 hours to the park with me to find her. We left immediately. On the drive, the monk explained that Diana had been coming to the temple for years, even before we met. He told me about her dedication to the practice, how she'd struggled with the nonviolence precept due to her past. He didn't elaborate on what her past meant, and I didn't press. It wasn't the time to dig into that particular mystery. We spent 2 days searching before we found her campsite. She was physically okay but clearly not thinking straight. Her tent was set up at the base of a cliff. She'd lost weight, her clothes were filthy, and she'd been writing in a journal that was filled with circles and symbols rather than words. She recognized us but seemed confused about why we were there. The monk spoke with her privately for over an hour. I don't know what was said, but afterward, She agreed to take the emergency medication I'd brought and come home with us. The drive back was quiet. The monk sat in the back seat, chanting softly. Diana slept most of the way, her head against the window. When we got back to her place, the monk helped me get her inside, made sure she took another dose of her medication, and then left with a promise to check on her the next day. It took about a week for Diana to fully come back to herself. When she did, we had a long talk about everything. She admitted that she'd been struggling with what happened during the break-in more than she'd let on. Causing someone's death, even indirectly and in self-defense, had hit her hard, especially as someone who followed the first Buddhist precept of not harming any living being. She told me that going off into the woods without her medication had been a form of self-punishment. She wanted to suffer like she believed she'd made the intruder suffer. The logic wasn't sound, but trauma doesn't follow logical patterns. She also revealed something I hadn't known before. She'd been trained in martial arts as a teenager. Her parents had insisted after something happened that she still wasn't ready to talk about. That explained the precision of her movements during the confrontation, the muscle memory that had kicked in despite years of non-violent practice. We immediately stepped up our approach to dealing with all this. We were already doing couples counseling every few months. Both of us are children of divorce and wanted to be proactive, but we increased that to weekly sessions. Diana also started seeing an individual therapist who specializes in trauma and understands Buddhist principles, which was important to her. We also completely overhauled the security at her place. I convinced her to adopt another dog, a big one this time. The puppy's already 75 pounds and still growing. Some kind of shepherd mix with paws the size of my fist. Diana named him Bodhi, after the Bodhi tree. A lot of people who commented on my original post suggested we should get married. That's not going to happen, at least not legally. Neither of us has ever been interested in marriage as a legal institution. But we did buy each other rings as a symbol of commitment. Having that physical reminder on my finger helps, especially on days when work keeps us apart. We're planning a small commitment ceremony for next fall, nothing legally binding, just a celebration with the people who matter most to us. The nightmares have mostly stopped. I still have them occasionally, images of blood and broken glass, the sound of bones cracking. Diana still has moments where she gets very quiet, staring off into nothing. I still flinch at unexpected noises. But we're working through it together. The couples counselor says we're handling things better than most couples would in similar circumstances. One thing that's changed is how open Diana is about her seizure condition. Before, she barely mentioned it to anyone. Now she makes sure at least 3 people always know where her medication is and what to do if she forgets to take it. We've had some conversations about her past that I doubt would have happened without this incident. She's told me bits and pieces about growing up in a household where her father had a temper, where she learned early that being small and female didn't mean you had to be helpless. How her Buddhist practice had been partly an attempt to counterbalance the anger she'd inherited from him. "I'm more like him than I want to be," she said one night. "That's what scares me about what happened." I showed Diana my original post and all the comments. She laughed at some parts, nodded seriously at others. When she got to the comments calling her a badass, she rolled her eyes but couldn't hide a small smile. She gave me permission to post this update as long as I kept us anonymous and wasn't an asshole online. For those who asked about legal stuff, we've both updated our wills and made each other medical power of attorney. The lawyer Diana called that night has become a friend of sorts, checking in periodically to make sure everything's still okay legally. He's helped us navigate the insurance claims for the property damage and medical costs, and connected us with resources we wouldn't have known about otherwise. I guess what I'm trying to say is that we're okay. Different, but okay. And for now, that's enough. Additional information and clarifications about Diana's condition. I should clarify about Diana's episode in the woods. It wasn't a mental breakdown. She has temporal lobe epilepsy that she's managed with medication since her teens. When she forgets or intentionally skips her medication, the seizures can manifest as what looks like psychosis or magical thinking. The neurologist explained that temporal lobe seizures specifically can cause religious experiences, feelings of profound insight, or the sense that the universe is sending personal messages. Diana has described it as feeling like she's receiving transmissions from beyond when an episode hits. Her thinking becomes circular, she sees patterns and connections everywhere, and ordinary objects seem imbued with special significance. This is why she became convinced she needed to stay in the forest. During the seizure state, she genuinely believed the trees were communicating essential wisdom to her. She's fully acknowledged that going off without her medication was essentially a form of self-harm. Getting her to agree to individual therapy was a huge step. She's always resisted it before, arguing that her Buddhist practice provided all the mental health support she needed. Both of us struggle with asking for help. About Diana's Buddhist perspective, Diana explained to me why she couldn't allow herself to feel relief or satisfaction about the intruder's death, even though part of me did. In her belief system, everyone needs a chance to learn to be better. Killing someone, even in self-defense, strips them of that chance in this lifetime and forces them to start over. Since memories don't follow you between lives, according to what she believes, wherever that guy is now, he's still suffering the consequences of his choices, which leads to more bad choices, and the cycle continues. The first precept in Buddhism is not to kill any living being. Diana had managed to follow this strictly for over a decade, not even killing insects in her home. Breaking this precept, even in self-defense, shook the foundation of her practice. Her teacher at the temple has been working with her on understanding the nuance of the precepts, that they're training principles, not absolute commandments, and that intention matters. Additional details about the original incident. Some people have suggested I felt emasculated by the situation. There's probably some truth to that. I don't necessarily think I should have been the one to handle it because I'm the man, but I've heard that from friends and family enough times now that it's gotten under my skin. That's part of what I'm discussing in therapy. My father was particularly blunt about it. You let your girlfriend fight your battles? As if her being capable somehow diminishes me. That mindset is still common where I grew up. The police response was abysmal. They took 37 minutes to arrive. When they finally showed up, they spent more time lecturing us about confronting the intruder than actually investigating. One officer straight up told us we should have hidden in a bedroom and waited. Diana later mentioned she's had issues with this police department before. It's a tiny town with minimal crime, so the cops seemed annoyed they had to do actual police work on the 4th of July. The truth is, they barely documented anything. Took a few photos, asked some basic questions, and then tried to leave without even checking if the intruder needed medical attention. The report they filed was so sparse that our insurance company had trouble processing our claim. Diana's lawyer had to step in and demand a more thorough investigation. Even then, it was clear they just wanted the whole thing to go away. About the shotgun, Diana only told me afterward that it wasn't loaded. She keeps it unloaded for safety but accessible enough to grab quickly. She knows how to use it. Her father taught her when she was younger, but says she's never fired it at anything living. I expected her to shoot the guy, not use it as a blunt weapon. Still effective, just not in the way I anticipated. Legal and practical matters. We've already taken care of our wills and are working on getting medical power of attorney established for each other. The legal matters related to the break-in are finally settled. No charges, no civil suits from the intruder's family. The case is officially closed. The district attorney reviewed everything and determined it was clearly self-defense. Diana's lawyer says this is the best possible outcome, though he warned us that the intruder's family could still file a civil suit within a certain time frame. So far, they haven't. The big dog was my idea. Diana was hesitant at first since she already had one small dog, but they've bonded quickly. The puppy is already fiercely protective of Diana. He sleeps at the foot of the bed, positioned between us and the door. We've enrolled him in training classes to make sure his protective instincts are properly channeled, but it's reassuring to have him there. Diana says his presence has helped reduce her hypervigilance at night. We've also established connections with neighbors who live about half a mile down the road. We check in with each other if anything seems off. Rural communities have their own ways of looking out for each other. One neighbor is a retired sheriff's deputy who's been especially helpful, advising us on security measures and offering to drive by if we're ever concerned about something. About the intruder, we learned more details from both his sister and the police report. He'd been in and out of treatment programs for decades. Started with alcohol in his teens, moved to harder drugs in his 20s. By the time he broke into Diana's place, he was in his 60s and had spent nearly half his life either incarcerated or institutionalized. The police report showed multiple prior arrests for breaking and entering, usually targeting isolated rural properties. That night, he'd already attempted to break into another house about 5 miles away but was scared off by their security system. The hospital found meth, fentanyl, and alcohol in his system. The doctors told his sister that the combination of drugs, his existing heart condition, and the injuries from the confrontation all contributed to his death 2 months later. Apparently, he never fully recovered from the punctured lung and other internal injuries. An infection set in eventually, and his system was too compromised to fight it off. His sister shared that he'd had periods of stability throughout his life, times when he'd get clean, find work, reconnect with family. But they never lasted. She described it as watching someone slowly disappear over decades, coming back briefly only to vanish again. Diana found some peace in learning about his life. He wasn't just the man who broke into our home, she told me afterward. He was someone's brother, someone's father. He mattered to people.